There's a chapter in the Bible most churches skip, Genesis chapter 6. It describes the mysterious sons of God, their union with human women, and the birth of the Nephilim, giants, heroes of old. This strange story sets the stage for the flood, raising questions that challenge our understanding. Today we'll step inside this locked room and explore what most skip. Genesis 6 doesn't appear out of nowhere. It's the climax of two family lines: Cain's, building cities but drifting from God, and Seth's, seeking him. These two streams of humanity move in opposite directions, one toward darkness, one toward light. The stage is set for a dramatic collision, and it's here that Genesis 6 drops its bombshell. Genesis 6 doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's the climax of a story that began when humanity left Eden. Two family lines, Cain and Seth, emerge, representing two paths, one of pride and violence, the other seeking God. This deep divide sets the stage for the shocking events to come, as humanity teeters between light and darkness. After Cain is exiled for his crime, he builds a city, an act of self-reliance, creating a civilization apart from God. His descendants become inventors, artists, and builders, but their achievements are marked by pride and violence. This culture, though advanced, is spiritually hollow, a house built on sand, glorifying human power while drifting ever further from its creator. In stark contrast to the darkening world of Cain's descendants, the Bible gives us a second family line that represents a glimmer of hope. After the tragedy of Abel's murder, Adam and Eve have another son, and Eve names him Seth, saying, "God has granted me another child in place of Abel, since Cain killed him." From his very birth, Seth is positioned as a replacement, a do-over, a chance to get things right. His name itself, meaning appointed, suggests a divine purpose. His lineage is not characterized by building cities or forging weapons, but by something far more profound and significant for the biblical narrative. The key verse that defines this family line is found in Genesis chapter 4, verse 26. After Seth has a son of his own, named Enosh, the text makes a simple but powerful statement. At that time, people began to call on the name of the Lord. This is a monumental moment. While Cain's line was busy making a name for themselves, Seth's line was focused on calling upon the name of God. This indicates the beginning of public worship, of community prayer, of a conscious and collective effort to maintain a relationship with their Creator. This was the line of faith, the people who preserved the story of creation and the promise of redemption in a world that was quickly forgetting both. Their genealogy, listed in Genesis chapter 5, is also structured differently from Cain's. While Cain's line ends in the boastful and violent poetry of Lamech, Seth's line culminates in a man named Noah. Along the way, we meet figures like Enoch, who walked faithfully with God and was so close to him that he was taken directly into heaven without experiencing death. This demonstrates the spiritual potential within Seth's lineage. It was a family that, despite living in a fallen world, produced individuals of incredible faith and righteousness. They were the keepers of the flame, a remnant holding onto the light as darkness encroached all around them. This sets up the primary interpretation for the Sethite theory, which we will explore later. In this view, the sons of God are the men from this godly line of Seth. They were the ones who were supposed to be different, to be set apart. They were the bearers of hope for the future of humanity. The stage is now fully set. You have the worldly, corrupt, and beautiful daughters from the line of Cain, representing a civilization spiraling away from God. And you have the supposedly godly sons from the line of Seth, who were meant to be the guardians of faith. The collision of these two lines is the fuse that lights the explosion of Genesis chapter 6. With the stage set, two family lines, a divided world, let's finally read the pivotal text in Genesis 6. Verse 1. When human beings began to increase in number on the earth and daughters were born to them, humanity is multiplying, just as God commanded, but this blessing becomes the backdrop for a shocking transgression. Verse 2. The sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. Who are these sons of God? The Hebrew is mysterious. Are they divine beings, godly men, or powerful rulers? The text leaves it open. The sequence is crucial. They saw and they took. This echoes the language of temptation and rebellion from earlier in Genesis. They married any of them they chose. This isn't about love or sacred union, but about taking, acquisition, and abuse of power. The author signals a violation of sacred order, a boundary crossed. This act is not just personal sin. It's a cosmic rupture. The consequences of this violation will ripple across the world. Something deeply wrong has entered the story. The pattern, they saw, and they took, should remind us of Eden. In Genesis 3, Eve saw the forbidden fruit, desired it, and took it, bringing sin into the world. Now the sons of God see and take, escalating the rebellion. This isn't just another mistake, it's a reenactment of humanity's original defiance, but on a grander, more destructive scale. The sacred institution of marriage is corrupted, driven by lust and power. God responds, "My spirit will not contend with humans forever, for they are mortal. Their days will be 120 years. God's patience is running out. The rebellion has reached a breaking point. This act triggers a divine limit on human life, a warning of greater judgment to come. The world is spiraling and God is about to intervene. The stage is set for a reckoning. The story takes a stranger turn. The Nephilim appear. Genesis 6:4. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. The Nephilim are the direct offspring of these forbidden unions. Their name likely means fallen ones, hinting at their origin or violent nature. Ancient translations called them giants, legendary, powerful, and infamous. They're described as heroes of old, men of renown. Not celebrated, but notorious. Their existence signals a world obsessed with power and violence, corrupted by unnatural mixing. The text notes, and also afterward. The Nephilim persist beyond the flood, haunting Israel's later history. This isn't just a pre-flood problem, it's a recurring shadow in the biblical story. The consequences of this sin echo far beyond Genesis. The oldest and most dramatic theory, the fallen angel interpretation. Here, the sons of God are not humans, but angels, members of God's heavenly host who rebelled. These angels crossed the boundary between heaven and earth, driven by lust, and fathered the Nephilim. This was the dominant view among ancient Jews and early Christians. The Hebrew phrase almost always refers to divine beings elsewhere in the Old Testament. In Job, the sons of God are clearly angelic, part of God's heavenly council. To ancient readers, Genesis 6 described a cosmic rebellion, not just human sin. The result, a polluted humanity, violence, and the monstrous Nephilim. The flood becomes not just punishment, but a desperate act to cleanse the world from demonic corruption. This interpretation frames Genesis 6 as a story of cosmic stakes. The fallen angel theory isn't just based on the Hebrew, it's backed by ancient Jewish literature. The Book of Enoch, influential among Jews and early Christians, expands Genesis 6 into a cosmic drama. Enoch names the angels, the Watchers, who descend, led by Samyaza, and take human wives at Mount Hermon. These Watchers teach forbidden knowledge, unleashing violence and corruption. Enoch's account explains why the world became so wicked that God sent the flood. This tradition was widely accepted in ancient times, shaping how people read Genesis 6. The Old Testament itself supports this. In Job, the sons of God are heavenly beings. Job 1:6, the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, clearly celestial. Job 38:7 places them at creation, long before humanity. The evidence points to a supernatural reading. Genesis 6 is about a cosmic boundary shattered. The New Testament echoes the fallen angel story from Genesis and Enoch. Peter and Jude both describe angels who sinned, were cast into darkness and await judgment. Their words match the Watcher's story, angels leaving heaven, crossing forbidden boundaries. For many, this is powerful confirmation. The New Testament affirms the ancient interpretation. The The Sethite interpretation offers a more grounded explanation for Genesis 6. Here, the sons of God are the godly descendants of Seth, and the daughters of humans are from Cain's line. The sin is not cosmic but spiritual, believers marrying unbelievers, leading to more decline. This view, championed by Augustine, reframes the story as a warning about spiritual compromise and the importance of faithfulness. The foundation of the Sethite interpretation rests squarely on the context we established earlier in Genesis chapters 4 and 5. The theory draws its strength from the clear distinction the Bible makes between the two family lines that populated the earth. As we saw, the lineage of Cain is characterized by its distance from God, its emphasis on human achievement, and its culmination in the violent and prideful boasts of Lamech. It represents a worldly, secular culture. In direct opposition, the lineage of Seth is defined by the fact that its members began to call on the name of the Lord. It represents the godly remnant, the line of faith, the church of the pre-flood world. With this framework in place, the terms sons of God and daughters of humans are reinterpreted. Proponents of this view argue that sons of God is a fitting title for those who belong to the line of Seth. After all, they were the ones who had a relationship with God, who worshipped Him, and who carried the spiritual hope of humanity. In the Old Testament, Israel is sometimes referred to as God's son, so it's not a huge stretch to see how this title could be applied to a lineage that was set apart for God. In this light, they are not divine by nature, but sons of God by virtue of their faith and their covenant relationship with Him. Conversely, the term daughters of humans is seen as a fitting description for the women from the ungodly line of Cain. The word for human here is ha-Adam, the same word used for Adam. The argument is that this term is being used to emphasize their earthliness, their worldliness, and their connection to the fallen nature of humanity, separate from God. They represent the allure of a culture that is beautiful and sophisticated on the outside but spiritually empty on the inside. So, the text is not describing a human-angel interaction, but an interaction between the godly and the worldly branches of the human family itself. The sin, therefore, is the complete breakdown of this crucial separation. The men of Seth, who should have known better, were captivated by the external beauty of the Cainite women and forsook their spiritual calling. They saw and they took, choosing wives based on worldly criteria rather than godly character. This mass intermarriage effectively destroyed the one remaining pocket of righteousness on earth. The godly line was absorbed into the ungodly one, and the light of Seth's lineage was extinguished. This resulted in a world where every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time, leaving God with no alternative but to start over with Noah's family. The Sethite view, while tidy, faces major challenges. It asks us to ignore the usual meaning of sons of God, which elsewhere refers to angels, not humans. The Nephilim, described as giants, are hard to explain if only human lineages are involved, and dividing Seth's and Cain's lines into wholly good or evil oversimplifies the biblical picture. Many find the theory neat but unconvincing. Beyond tales of angels and intermarriage, some scholars see sons of God as a political title for ancient kings. In Egypt and Mesopotamia, rulers claimed divine status, calling themselves sons of their chief deity. Genesis then critiques these kings' abuse of power, taking women, oppressing people, and acting as gods. The story warns against tyranny and the corruption of unchecked authority. The ancient kings theory explains why the offspring were called heroes of old, famous, powerful figures born into royal courts. It fits the Bible's theme of God opposing arrogant rulers. But the Hebrew phrase sons of God usually means angels, not kings, and the theory struggles to explain the Nephilim as literal giants. It offers a political lesson, but leaves some mysteries unsolved. The Nephilim, mysterious offspring of the sons of God and daughters of humans, are the most sensational detail in Genesis. Their name, Nephilim, comes from the Hebrew root nephal, meaning to fall. So, they're the fallen ones, either for their origins or their violent actions. Ancient translators even called them giants, shaping how we imagine these legendary beings to this day. Genesis tells us the Nephilim, giants, were on earth before and after the flood. The flood didn't end their story. They reappear in Canaan, terrifying the Israelites. The spies report, "We saw the Nephilim there. We seemed like grasshoppers." These giants, like Goliath, echo a primordial sin, reminders of ancient threats that haunted God's people for generations. Genesis 6:1-4 isn't just a strange tale, it's the turning point of the biblical story. The rise of the Nephilim and the corruption that followed led to God's heartbreaking verdict. Humanity's wickedness was total. The flood wasn't random, it was a direct response to this overwhelming evil. To understand the flood, you must understand the sin that made it necessary. In a world filled with corruption, one man stood apart: Noah. Genesis says, Noah was a righteous man, blameless among his people, and he walked faithfully with God. Some believe blameless in his generations means Noah's lineage remained uncorrupted, both morally and genetically. God preserved Noah's family in the ark, protecting the last hope for a new beginning. After exploring the ancient texts and the three main theories, the fallen angel, Sethite, and ancient king's views, each offers compelling insights and challenges. For me, the fallen angel theory best fits the text, though all have value. Ultimately, Genesis 6 remains a mystery, an invitation to wrestle with Scripture's depth and wonder. Genesis 6 is one of the Bible's most mysterious chapters. Fallen angels, giants, and a world corrupted by sin. It reminds us of the catastrophic consequences when boundaries are crossed, and the flood is a sorrowful act to save creation. This story invites us to see the spiritual realm, ask questions, and dig deeper. What do you think Genesis 6 is really about?